Hello, and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkingstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I'm your host, Scott Dr. Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything is on the One, The First Guide to Funk. If you don't have your copy, get on over to Amazon and pick one up. You'll be glad you did, and I'll be very grateful. Speaking of grateful, whether you're watching or listening, as always, I thank you very much for your continued interest and support. And I want to make sure that you subscribe. Subscribe to Truth and Rhythm at the Funkin' Stuff channel on YouTube. We need that support. Thank you for that. This episode features longtime Parliament-Funkadelic, P-Funk All-Stars, and George Clinton bassist Lige Curry. Born in Flint, Michigan, and raised in Cleveland, he got deep into music as a teenager, inspired by his cousin, Michael Hampton, a wicked guitarist who soon joined the funk mob and was dubbed Kid Funkadelic. Lige began hanging around that camp, and before he knew it, he was lending background vocals to 1979's Funkadelic smash album, Uncle Jam Wants You, and playing bass on Parliament's 1980 Trombipulation album and Funkadelic's final Warner Brothers album in 1981, The Electric Spanking of War Babies. He went on to become a permanent fixture in studio and on stage for pretty much every Clinton-related show and project through the 1980s, 1990s, and right up to the present day. That includes all of Clinton's solo albums as well as the P-Funk All-Stars records. Along the way, in addition to his cousin Hampton, he has worked with all the P-Funk luminaries like Bernie Worrell, Eddie Hazel, Boogie Mosson, Garry Shider, Bootsy Collins, Rodney Skeet Curtis, Blackbyrd McKnight, and so many others, many of which are sadly no longer funking in this frequency. Lige has also recorded and released many of his own projects, as well as those with others from the P-Funk camp, including current band members Danny Bedrosian and Garrett Scheider, both of which have also done Truth and Rhythm episodes. I encourage you to check those out. Here, in a sprawling three-part interview, Lige dives into every conceivable aspect of his 40-year stint with the good Dr. Funkenstein. And now, Lige Curry. I am psyched to welcome to Truth and Rhythm longtime Parliament-Funkadelic bassist, singer, songwriter, and producer, Lige Curry. Lige, how's it going today?
It's doing good, man. You know, just getting my day going on. I'm over here on the West Coast, San Diego, and just trying to, fill out everything today. I had a rehearsal earlier today, earlier this morning with a band that I'm possibly putting together called Lige-delic. So, I'm looking at a new drummer today. The one that I had moved to Colorado. So this is what I do when I come home off the tour with George Clinton. I try to put things together, personal things that I'm doing. So
yeah,
that's how my day has been going so far.
I'm sure you have a lot of catching up to do because, I mean, you guys have been hitting the road hard for quite a while.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, for this year, we started in January, and it's been one of them things where, we didn't expect to see the dates that we did see. And, George, I've seen that party before, and, some of the younger ones that are not there, they might be a little bit new to it, but I've seen that movie. A good record out always brings a lot of attention, and, that's just how that is.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it all in all these years, all the way back since the...
I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot during my time. I'll put it to you like that.
Since the late 1970s.
Yeah. 78, 79. That's kind of when I started actually going out on the road with the band, And for me, it was like a dream come true, because I have a cousin that also is historical and a legend in the band. His name is Michael Hampton, Kid Funkadelic. And he joined the band in 74, so we kind of been like funked out for a while, so it's been cool. See, You got a whole lot of stuff back there in your room there. Would you play instruments too?
I dabble, you know. I'm
Yeah.
a frustrated musician, so I kind of get mad, you know,
We're all
vicariously.
frustrated, bro. That's just how it is, you know. You got some gold platinum records up there, right?
Uh, yeah, Gold, Mothership Connection, Tear the Roof Off, and then that one's a Prince record.
I'm afraid to ask you where you get those.
I bought those from a record store back in the late 80s.
Really, man?
Yeah.
How did that happen? They look pretty official to me.
Those are authentic. They got the hologram and all that. Yeah.
Now, it reminds me of the story of Muhammad Ali, when he realized that those gold medals wasn't worth anything anymore. So he threw them over in the river over there in Louisville or whatever that river where he was from. Um, I thought that was horrible. You know what I mean? At the time when he did that, but I've seen cases, not so much as in sports, but in music where people lose like trophies like that, or they get rid of them through maybe pawning them or something, or moving around, losing them. I don't know. Another case was a guy who just passed away. His name is Ron Dunbar. He was a producer for George Clinton and Parliament-Funkadelic in the 80s. And he knew George a while back, but he also was a writer. He wrote like a couple of hit records where he received a Grammy, and the Grammy some kind of way got away from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen it on Pawn Stars, man. It was a show where this guy came into Stars, had Ron Dunbar's Grammy. I think it was, I don't know if it was Free to Pain or one of them other R&B stars, but it was amazing. And to get back to my story with you, that you have those, people don't really value the trophy part of it like I thought that they would. When I first got into business, like to get a gold record or a platinum record, it was like the ultimate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like to let something like that get away. It seemed like it should be passed down to a family era or something like that. Like instead of like winding up in somebody's pawn shop or or a record store or something like. Other than their wall, it should be on their wall. Whatever. Life is different. It always deals us different kind of hands, so we have to deal with it however. But at least I know a funk fan has this stuff.
Exactly. That is my favorite record of all time. So
okay, I got you.
cool. But when you brought up Ron Dunbar, and gosh, so many great figures associated with the funk mob have left us the past few years. It's just that's hard to take, isn't it? I mean, how do you kind of just keep rolling? You got to keep rolling, right?
Well, it ain't that you have to keep rolling. I definitely am one that have been missing a lot of the people that was here, before I was here and after. And I'll just tell you a little brief story about one of the guys that passed away. Ron Dunbar, bless his soul. But probably one of my best friends was Garry Shider. And when he passed away, I couldn't deal with it. It was one of them things where I felt, what good is it now? What is my purpose? And I know how large George is, and I know what type of entity he is and what he brought and what he still brings to the table. But, we all have our favorites, I guess, so to speak. And Garry had become more like an older brother to me, and for a lot of us too. But his passing just, it took so much out of me, Scott, where I felt as though I didn't want to continue on with the band anymore.
Wow.
That's pretty deep because I love the music like that, and I remember George going to the hospital when Garry was on his last days, you know, and he was telling me when he got back, you know, okay, Garry had passed. So when he got back, he wanted to speak to me, you know. I didn't know what about at the time. I was too devastated. I know he was devastated too. But it took me a while to want to sit down and actually just speak to George about, not that George was to blame or anything like that. I just felt like every ounce of my funk blood was drained when Garry left this earth, you know. But he's still with us, which is my point I'm getting to. When I did eventually speak to George, he was more, well, Lige, do it for the guys that can't do it anymore. Do it for the ones that are not here, because they would love to see you continue on, as well as me and the rest of us that are still here doing it, because they put that kind of time and energy and effort into it, as well as I and a few others, you know. But I didn't look at it like to continue on, you know what I mean? So it was like an awakening for me and a growth period for me, you know. His passing was definitely devastating, but it grew me up to this group, to this music a little bit more than I was before. So I'm glad that I had to talk with George, and make a long story short. But there's a few of them that passed away that got me, man. You know, I can go back as far as, you know, Eddie Hazel and Tyrone Lampkins and a lot of these kind of guys. And we lost Miss Belita Woods. We lost one of my dear teachers and good friends, Cordell Boogie Mosson. It's I mean, the list, and one of my, oh God, this guy started me off in the studio from a more independent side of it. His name was Ron Ford, and Ron Ford passed away. And it's just, you know, things happen. They happen, you know.
Peanut also, yeah.
Peanut was like, oh yeah, that's, I mean, there's so many of them, you know what I mean? One year it was like Malia Franklin, you know, everybody was just going, you know, Debbie Wright, you know.
Bernie, I don't know if we said Bernie, but yeah.
Bernie Worrell, yeah, I mean, it's just, everything started just hitting us. And then, you know, and then it flipped for me too, because at that time, then I started thinking about George. I was like, wow, how is he dealing with all of this? You know what I mean? I started thinking about him emotionally from, you know, he must be going through, because I knew these people as well, but he knew them longer. And we all have our little, I always say we all had our little key to the door to George, you know what I mean? But everybody's key is different. My key won't lock the next person's door, and his key won't unlock mine to George. George always treated you like a separate individual with just as much respect as you was giving him, you know, especially when you're talking to him from other angles, you know. Not, it don't have to be about music all the time, you know. But like I said, he grew me up in a lot of ways where I didn't even think. And I was thinking more of myself, like, oh, I'm hurting. See, I'm tired of this. I don't want no more. And that's the wrong attitude to take, you know, because you got a lot of fans out there who has now jumped on board since I've been in the band, you know, and they know who you are, and especially the Asians, man. The Japanese people know everything about you that you don't even know. It seems like they do research on you, like they go through every little thing, you know. They know, and you can't lie to them. Like when you're doing an interview, don't try to lie. Because they know exactly how many albums, whatever, because they're big album cover readers, you know. They're big, you know, they're into the historical part of it. You know, you find some people in America like that, but the Japanese as a people are like that, you know, and I love that part about them.
Meticulous.
Actually. Yeah, they're very meticulous, you know. But yeah, man, I'm getting over the fact that we lost a few people, and you know, we keep going. We keep trying to make it new. We keep incorporating younger people. George is bringing in even more younger people, like his grandchildren. And for those are the ones that want to, see what it was like for him to do what he do. There's a few of them that love music like that, but I'm just curious to see how far, his siblings and, his grandchildren take it, because this is not an easy business. And what George did is not only great music, he did some historical things in the business of music, so some big shoes to fill, man.
Oh, no doubt.
Well,
I want to go back, Lige, and do some Lige Curry history, though. So your cousin was, Kid Funkadelic. That kind of got you close to the funk mob. But how did you first get into bass, and how did you first get into actually playing with the band?
Well, I've actually started playing guitar, like I said, like you said, my cousin Michael, Kid Funkadelic Hampton. We're only a year apart. So he got a guitar and he started doing his thing with it. I was basically into sports, in high school, junior high. And I was I came a little later with playing, he has about 2, maybe almost 3 years on me playing. But I got the guitar because I begged my mom to get me one because my cousin Michael had one. So I want one. Naturally, kids that are 9, 10 years old, that's what they do. So I got one, and it kind of stayed in the corner for like the first year. I just wanted it, you know what I mean? So my mother was nice enough to get it. So, when you do sports, you have to deal with being hurt. You're gonna get hurt, especially in contact sports. So I got hurt, picked the guitar up, and started playing it a little bit more. And through that, I started loving music a little bit more while I was hurt. Now, I eventually, like my cousin, we used to get together and play. And one day he came up with the idea, like, hey man, why don't you get a bass? Because he had definitely excelled. He was taking lessons. He was moving a little bit faster than me. And he asked if I would get a bass. And he's like, we could put a band together. You could find a drummer. Michael was always like that, So I went on and got a bass. I went and traded in my guitar. Back then you could go to the back of the store and that's all the used instruments are. So I went back there, traded my guitar in for this bass. It's a Vox bass. So to make a long story short, he and I started playing, and my love for bass just started growing from that point on. I started learning out the roles of a bass player, position in a band. What do I do? What is this instrument about? I started trying to find out all about the bass. And then, you start listening to some of the guys that you got the records, Chris Squire. It wasn't just Bootsy and Billy for me. It was, it was a lot of other guys that I listened to that were very, very, we were into rock too, like Cleveland was like, there's this station called WMMS, home of the buzzer. And me and Mike used to always listen to we was in a Zeppelin, all kind of crazy, rock, it's good stuff. And just funk just happened to come our way. But that's how I got into the bass pretty much. It was just an idea that my cousin Mike came up with. Hey, why don't you get a bass? So I ended up getting a bass, and I still mess around with guitar a little bit, but I play more bass now. I would say bass is my main instrument. You know what I mean? From that point. And it's been history for me ever since then, I had to learn from some historical guys, and they made me more into the bass, like Boogie Mosson. Then I met Skeet Curtis, who when I was a teenager, we found out that basically me and him the same age, and we were into some of the same people like Jocko, Stanley Clark, stuff like that. Pretty progressive stuff. And and then just the love for everybody that I've met so far up until now has even strengthened my love for bass, man. It made me want to produce, I'm producing Star Colors, her next record, bass player, you know, and just bass is in my world now, the low end. Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go.
You're gonna see I got a bunch of your stuff here. So
Oh man, dude, that's her first record. Welcome to the universe of Star Colors. Yeah, she's working on her next studio record now, and we're kind of like, I wouldn't say in the middle of it. We're kind of like at the back half of it, you know. And it's gonna be even better than that one, man. But I'm glad you got that. That's not. I'll tell her. She'd be happy to hear that. She loves hearing all that kind of shit.
So, Lige, when you first got with P-Funk, though, started playing with them or started hanging around them, what were some of your like early impressions of some of the colorful characters that were famous in P-Funk? You know, what was your first impressions of George and Bernie and Eddie and a lot?
Oh, we first, you know, Mike and I knew some people out of Cleveland who, in '74, they took us to the show. That's how we met the guy. We met the guy. It's a mutual friend from Cleveland. Took us to the Cleveland Public Auditorium in '74, summer of '74, and you know we had, you know, the album covers. We reading it. We look, you know, back then you put on the headphones or not, and you sit around. You roll your little weed, seeds, blah, blah, blah. And you sit around and you listen to albums. Mm-hmm. So Funkadelic was like one of our favorite groups to listen to albums together. So, you know, we felt like when it actually happened for us that Mike got with it, now I understand, like, I don't know if you're into the law of attraction or anything like that, but, you know, we really willed that group to us and didn't know it. You know what I mean? Because we were involved with them before we knew them. We were involved with the music that deeply, you know. So, but yeah. Oh, I kind of got off. What was the question again? I kind of got off.
I was asking you when you first got to meet guys like George and spend some time.
Oh yeah.
Spend some time with them.
Yeah, something I was gonna say for that. Okay, say the let's see, what record was that? Was the Cosmic Slop? Any of that stuff that Pedro Bell did, right? That stuff had your mind going. So I see the album covers. So when I see them live, dude, they kind of almost look like the album covers. Actually, they did. So, you know, Pedro had you looking all crazy, whatever. But listen, man, George came out that night and he had his hair cut in like a star and crescent. And he had makeup on, you know, like his face, like this white makeup. And he had a sheet. And the sheet, found out later, he had nothing on under the sheet. So, but anyway, I'm looking at these cats, and me and Mike, we go straight up to the front, right? Because Mike wanted to see Eddie Hazel, because Mike was always deep into like, is he gonna do the solo like the record, you know? So he goes up front, he's like right in front of Eddie, and they're doing Standing on the Verge. And he didn't do the solo at all. It was more like they was just grooving, you know. And now I understand that since I've been in the band, like they was just vamping, like they just get on one thing and just stay right there and lock that pocket. It's almost like some spiritual church stuff, you know. I always, you know, compare it to like sanctified church, you know, where you just lay in that one groove and eventually people start shouting and it's just hypnotic, you know, and it's just that groove can be so powerful it could just take you to other places. And that's what they did when we first seen them. And they were dressed all in these crazy, you know, Eddie Hazel had on this long dashiki type of robe. And like I said, George had the sheet thing on, and, you know, Fuzzy and Grady always wore purple. He had on this like Middle Eastern type of hairpiece, garb over his head or whatever. And Tiki Fullwood was dressed like a pirate, you know what I mean? He had like this, I don't know, he just looked like something out of the pirate era, you know? And Boogie, you know, because, you know, you read the thing, it's like, you know, what they call him, the black leprechaun or some shit, you know what I mean? Because I read all of that crazy stuff. And he stood there all night just getting stupid. Because when I first seen him, Billy Bass and Tao Ross were gone. They had replaced those guys with Boogie and Garry Shider. Eddie Hazel was still there. Bernie Worrell was still there. And Tiki Fullwood was still there. And the original Parliaments were there. But no Billy Bass. That's show you, like 74, Billy Bass was already gone. Already doing his thing, you know, somewhere else, which he ended up doing a lot of recordings for other people too. But I didn't get a chance to see him at that time, you know what I mean? It wasn't until he got in the band in the like 90s. And then when he came back, he was playing more guitar than he was playing bass, you know. We almost had to beg him to play bass, you know. And then he didn't want to play nothing but the old stuff. But they all looked zany, man. They were all characters. They were right off the doggone album cover, man. It was just crazy for me just to see that, you know. And even after the show, man, it's the stuff they had on after the show, all the studs and rhinestones and leather and denim and, you know, it was just like funky, man. They was the funkiest cats on the planet to me. And they still are, you know. I don't know nobody else's and came behind them and did it like they did it, you know what I mean, at that time, you know. We all wanted to be like that, man, because we were teenagers at the time. It was like the rap music now with the kids, you know. That was something that my parents, like, they wasn't really ready for me to listen to, like, Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow, you know. My mother used to say, what is that you're playing down there in the basement, you know? Because George didn't mind cussing. Shit, goddamn, get off your ass. And we downstairs jamming, you know. Like, aren't they swearing on that song? And you don't say nothing, you know what I mean? Then my mother finally got a hold to it, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff, man. Like, America was kind of conservative back in those days, I think.
Yeah. Lige, what was the first, do you remember your first show playing with them?
The first show? Yeah. That was in, I just finished, I rehearsed for the Glory Halla Stupid tour at the end of 1979. And
here's that record.
Yeah. There you go, right there. That was my beginnings, man. You know, I'm not on that record, but when I came in the band, I had to learn that stuff. You know what I mean? And, you know, because personally, I thought Donnie Sterling was going to be the bass player when Skeet Curtis left, because he's all over that record, you know. But anyway, yeah, I think my first show was somewhere in Los Angeles, man, because we did a couple of tune-up shows right after we rehearsed. I can't really remember the exact venue where we played, but I know it was somewhere in Los Angeles.
Okay, because I saw that show at the Santa Monica Civic. Could that have been?
That might have been the very first one, man.
That'd been some.
That might have been the very first one. And, you know, after that, because I was the only bass player, because when Skeet left, I thought they were going to maybe hire another guy to give me some help. But Maceo was the band director, and he said, no, it's just going to be you. And Garry Shider kind of co-signed it. So I had to really jump into it. You know, I remember Bernie Worrell and Eddie Hazel standing over me, kind of auditioning me, you know, like not so much as how many songs I know, but they were looking at the style that I was playing, my style. And I was nervous as hell, man. You know, I got two of the main heroes that's standing over me, Bernie and Eddie, you know, and I just knew that when I left that rehearsal, I knew that it wasn't going to be no like, well, maybe come back and we'll try you again. It's going to be like you either got it or you don't got it. So the next day, Garry Shider came to the office. They had an office in in Hollywood and Vine, where they had Thang headquarters. And I went to the office the next day, and Garry came in there and said, "Hey, man, you're going to be playing bass." And I was like, "Oh, wow." It just tripped me out. I wasn't ready to hear that. And even if I did went over and go and rehearse and audition. But I got it, man. And then I started, I started doing vocal sessions too. Like Garry and Mr. Clinton found out I could sing a little bit. So that's a whole nother world. Like, when you tracking or whatever you're doing for the funk or whatever, that's, bring the musicians in. But when the vocal sessions start, oh, wow, it's just a whole nother thing. It's like George goes into this, like, we got to have this, that, and it's got to be right. Because if you listen to any other Parliament-Funkadelic songs, man, I mean, I don't care if it's a hit or not, the vocals are so spot on, it's ridiculous. Even when they clowning around, man, and I think that's just because of his singing group background, when he was with the Parliaments and his love for Motown, because, they packed up and went over to Motown, tried to get signed, and they actually did, but they didn't push him like he thought they should. But he said it was hard to compete against Temptations in the Four Tops.
A little bit.
And at that time, I didn't know that Berry was truly only signing Michigan acts. Berry wasn't really, only one other act that I know that was not from Detroit, and that was Marvin Gaye. He was from DC. And I didn't realize that until George told me. It's like Berry wasn't really often like signing other singing groups from outside of Michigan. And I'm like, I thought about it, and I was like, started running down a list of artists and groups and things. And I was like, man, everybody's from Detroit. Or some part like Flint, like Stevie Wonder's from Saginaw, different spots in Michigan, but nevertheless inside of that state, So that told me a lot about Berry, how he was actually running his business back in the day, If he couldn't keep a close watch on you, I guess you wasn't happening, or you weren't going to get in the band. But then George became that writer. See? He became a part of that Motown writing thing, like I Bet You, you know what I mean? Jackson 5 ended up doing that again. They got a copy of I Bet You that with Michael Jackson singing all of the cool little parts, him and Jermaine. But yeah, man, so pretty crazy,
So when you started playing with him and you're playing, Glory Hell the Stupid Stuff, and then moving on from there, were there one or two songs maybe that were more challenging or kind of harder for you to get right?
At that time, it was probably the theme from the Black Hole. And it was just the feel of it. A lot of stuff is not that I can't play it. It's getting the correct feel for it. Because if it doesn't feel right to those that wrote it, then they probably gonna fire you off the song. And if you're really good, you can fire yourself if you know that you ain't on the one with it. But it was a few songs that it wasn't so much as like that particular album, The Glory Hell the Stupid Stuff. It's when George would go off into his older stuff, and you have to have like a pretty vast awareness of his catalog to like, if he calls off, I Just Want to Testify, the original one, he'll do that and you'll be like, okay, but you really do have to go over a lot of his music, I would think, before you even want to attempt to try to be in his band, you know what I mean? Because he got like so huge of a catalog, man, Tear the Roof Off was always a deep one. Not so much for me. I think for more like George. George has to feel you with these songs, So when you learning them, you try to learn if you ain't got the writers around you that wrote it, like Garry and them since they gone, and Boog and all that, Bootsy always with his thing, but George can only really give you the feel of what you are going after. Like, I can get the notes, but it's the way you play the notes, you know, and he hears that, you know, and that's why he's such a genius in what he does. He does know his music like the back of his hand, you know. And you know, I try my best to play that stuff as best as I can. I've been playing it so long now that I will say I can bring more of me to the table. You know what I mean? Once you learn the arrangements and the feel of it, then you can start sticking little elements of you in it, you know, to whereas it won't be disturbing to someone like George or whoever wrote it. You know what I mean? That's the main thing. I like to respect the writers, you know, that did this stuff, you know, because I would hate for somebody to play my music jacked up too, you know. I want them to play the best they can. If I'm gonna hire you to do it, you know what I mean, I must believe that you can do it, first of all. And so, you know, just do the best you can do. And like George say,
Who were your early drummers that you had to lock in with at that time?
Dennis Chambers.
Oh yeah,
that guy. Yeah, Dennis Chambers was me and him. He got in the band like he was playing with the Brides of Funkenstein, and he and Blackbyrd both. But then when the Brides broke up, they both got like moved up to the P-Funk band, and Dennis became the drummer. And I just remember Dennis like, you know, we've all gotten better over the years, but at that time, Dennis was very, very much progressive, so to speak. He's like a young Billy Cobham to me, you know, and he play on the edge. He was an edge dude. See, what I learned from George and Bernie and them, funk is really like Boogie used to always say like this. You have like 1, 2, 3, and 4 in one beat. Like poof. So you can either choose to hit on top of the one, like that little laid back second, or that even more laid back, or all the way in the back of the 4. Boog was a fan of way back here. And he would be able to pull drummers back. Like if they started speeding up or whatever, he could get on the back of that 4. And if you hit down before he do, then you're wrong. You know what I mean? So he taught me a lot about that part about the 1, you know, that it was broke up into 4, you know, and you can play. And like I said, Dennis was the one that stayed on the top. He was edgy. So George would always have to bring him and Skeet back. You always have to pull them back because they're flying. If you listen to the Beverly Theater tape, that double CD.
I was at that show.
Way too fast. You were at that show?
I was there.
Nice. There was a few people at that show. Prince and Jesse Johnson came one night. You know,
Sorry.
we were trying to get Prince to sit in, but he wouldn't do it. You know, I heard even Michael Jackson came to one of those shows. You know, so and that was during the time where Atomic Dog had just knocked Billie Jean off the top of the charts, and we actually was doing Atomic Dog twice a night. Like we'd get to the end of it, then flip it and start it back up to the top and do it all again. You know, that's how popular that song was, though. Actually, you know, and yeah, but that's. I didn't know you was at that show. You've been around for a while, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. That show, amazing lineup at that show, and it was loud, man. That show was loud.
Yeah, OP Funk.
Bootsy came out too, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Boot. It was like I said, Atomic Dog was such a big record, and it was George's solo artist endeavor. You know, it was his first big George Clinton record. You know, so yeah, man, I was definitely having a good time back in those days. You know, coming up.
I'm going to Were you on this record?
I sang on that record only. Yeah, like Big Freak, claim to be Freak of the Week. Me and Clip Payne, we did a lot of background. I might have not got mentioned on that record, but I definitely, that was my very first record that I participated on, you know, and it was just singing only. That's the only thing. And it was amazing that I got a chance to get on that one too, you know what I mean? That's one of my favorites, man. I like all of the stuff that Felipe Wynn did on that record, you know. That's when I was looking at him like, what is the spinner doing over here in the Funkadelic world, you know? Because my mom is a big Spinners fan and she loved Felipe Wynn. So when she found out that I was working with him, she went crazy. He actually autographed a picture for her and everything. And he's another one that passed away earlier on, you know? So
yep.
They've been dropping like flies, man.
What do you remember?
Yeah, there you go. That's the one right there. I so wish, every time I see that cover, I just wish Warner Brothers would have lightened up on us a little bit more. Yeah. we had those people back in those women back in the day who, you know, before that sticker got really popular, you know, about, you know, violent language and whatever, you know, and they messed that whole record up, man, by putting that big green thing on it. But then Pedro is pretty deep too, because it was a chick inside of like a space capsule shaped like a dick. And I'm like, oh God, why is my first Funkadelic record that I'm actually playing on? Yeah, that's how the cover should have went. Exactly. And then that's how it should have went. You know, we you know, we can open it up and look at the way it really looks or whatever. But
well, it was supposed to be a double record, right?
Yeah, and that was another thing about Warner Brothers. They didn't want a double record, and George kind of forced them to want the record, and there's a lot of bickering going on with that record, man. I was tripping because it's like, this is my first Funkadelic record. Why is it a problem? Why are people having an issue about this? But now it's all history now. And you look back at that, and, you know, a lot of that stuff on that record, I'm going to try to teach some of these younger guys who I'm working with, you know, see if they can learn stuff like Icka Prick and stuff like that, you know.
If Funk Gets Stronger, that's a great track.
Yeah, that's what guitar players, they trip on that one because, you know, Michael wasn't the easiest guy to go behind, you know, and he still ain't.
And you're on this one?
Oh, yeah. Now, that one, see, now, those albums to me, that Parliament record, Trombipulation, along with, you know, Electric Spankers and War Babies, those came out within a couple of years apart, you know. And New Do Review is one that I co-wrote with George and Ron Ford on that one. And I was really blessed and thankful. I got, you know, Bootsy played the drums, and, you know, I started, by the time we did that record, Trombipulation, I felt like I was kind of in the group then. You know what I mean? It was still up in the air, man, you know, for me, you know, because it takes me a while to feel comfortable, you know, in situations like that, you know. And but the guys were so great. The nicest, they might look weird and the music sounds weird, but these are some of the nicest guys on the planet Earth, man. They really are. And their love is something that I want to continue to keep spreading as well. Like Eddie Hazel, when you got to know Eddie or Bernie or even George, if you get to know them, man, they the best guys in the world, man. They really are some good people, and they were raised around some good people. So, and that was one of the main things that my mom and dad, and Michael's mom and dad, they were worried because, you know, Michael was only 17 when he got with the band. You know, and I was 16, and I wasn't going anywhere because I was still in high school. And they, you know, Michael's parents wanted to meet George now, you know, and get to know them, you know, because he was still a baby in their eyes, you know. So he finally, you know, when he came off the road, they finally met him, because the way he left was so crazy. You had to make a quick decision. And he left without telling his parents. So he didn't really get in a lot of trouble about it, but I did, because I was still at home, and they, you know, I actually drove him to the airport in my car. But his parents worked during the day, and they called, and we had to make a decision. And they said they had a paid flight for Michael to go to DC to play the Capitol Center, and that was his first show, you know, in '74. And I drove him to the airport, and when they got home from work, man, they lit into my butt, boy. I'll never forget that, you know. And I was just glad, like, when Michael finally called number one to let him know he was okay. And when he finally got off the road, like maybe a month after that, they drove, because they were in station wagons, man. It was no tour bus back in '74. They had like 2 station wagons. They all jammed in it. You know what I mean? Like for them to pull up like at Michael's house, because Michael had told me, "You gotta be here." Da, 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 da. So I run over there, and then I seen them when they pull up in those station wagons. I was excited to see them. You know what I mean? But it was like pulling them out the damn wagon, man. Like that was the funniest. Just smoke coming out the fucking thing. You know what I mean?
That was before the platinum records.
Yeah, I was way before platinum, man. I like to think when Mike got in the band, that's when they actually started getting platinum records. You know what I mean? Because yeah, all of that Knee Deep stuff came, and One Nation came, and I mean, I Just Want to Testify was a hit back in the '60s. You know, when the singing group thing with the Parliaments, but he really didn't have a real big hit record like Slop, like Up or the Downstroke. That period, it started changing then, you know. But when he started going into this space thing, you know what I mean, this Mothership Connection thing, and which I wear him out to this day, because I really do believe George should have never left that. I thought it was just so much that you could do from that standpoint, like space. That's what it is. It's space, dude. You could just like stay unlimited. Exactly. And Star Colors is the one, we were talking about it yesterday, and she was like, you don't know why he ever left that period, you know. And it's like, he's left it, you know. I don't know why he did, other than he wanted to do something different. But man, he could have stayed right there with me, intergalactic, wherever. He could have just stayed right there, dude, and I would have been by now. Because I told him, I said, this is one thing I told him lately. I said, it would be nice if we do the spaceship again. And he looked at me like, oh God, not that. And I said, well, listen, before you start not thinking that it's cool, technology has grown, right? Like back when he did the spaceship in the '70s, technology was nowhere near what it is now. So, you know, you got this holographic stuff going on and everything that you can do to create this, and it could look even better.